Hello students, I welcome you all to Polity Lectures by Azad ICS Academy. Now what are we going to cover in this particular topic? We'll be discussing about entire Indian polity, and then you may have a lot of questions like, do we only have to rely on the lectures or do we need to cover anything else? The first important thing that I want to tell you is that I have made polity lectures very simple for all the students. If you're seeing it for the first time, then also no issues, and if you've already completed polity lectures, this will be like a revision. See, sometimes what happens is, even if you have prepared very well, there will be some topics that you have left out with, or some facts that you are not aware of. All these things will be covered during this particular lecture. Now let us see what do we cover in this topic. So we have basically two parts when it comes to Indian polity. It is Indian polity and the governance. I will not be doing governance right now. We will be focusing on all the polity lectures for now. Especially in the Indian Constitution, we will be seeing all the topics. Like, what are the topics that we will be looking into Indian Constitution here is, first we will see with the historical background, and then we will see making of Indian Constitution, right? And then we will also see the salient features of Indian Constitution. Then we will start with preamble, and then from union and its territories, which is the part 1 of the Constitution. Then we'll see the part 2 of the Constitution, that is citizenship. Part 3 of the Constitution, that is fundamental rights. Part 4 of the Constitution, that is DPSP. And then part 4A of the Constitution, which is going to be your fundamental duties. Along with this, I'll also be discussing some other important topics like how can you amend a constitution, what is basic structure doctrine, how does this evolution basically happen. We'll be discussing about all of this in the first topic of Indian Constitution. Then we will see the executive. In the executive, we will be discussing all the executive bodies in our country, like it could be president, vice president, prime minister, his council of ministers, and all of that. We will see legislature, how the laws are made in our country, right? How the bills are being passed, what are the different types of bills that we have: ordinary bill, constitutional amendment bill, we have money bill, we have financial bill, all that, and we'll see how a particular legislature works, right? And then we'll see judiciary, very important. We will see the different types of court systems that we have, that is Supreme Court, we have High Court, we have district courts, we have subordinate courts. We'll discuss in detail about that in this particular judiciary topic. We'll also discuss about local government. In the local government, we'll discuss about panchayat, municipality, cooperative societies, cooperatives, etc. Elections in India, we'll see all the election, how the election is happening, what are the important topics that are coming under election, electoral reforms, election commission, state election commission, central election commission, how is it made of, or what are the different people who are involved in election, how election process is there, all the rules, regulations, etc. will be discussed over here. We will see constitutional bodies, and we'll also see statutory, non-statutory bodies at the end. And in between, we'll also see about center-state, interstate relation, parliamentary form of government, federal structure, etc. So this is what we'll be covering in Indian polity. And whenever I am discussing any particular article, I will also be discussing the important case that is related, if there is any case that exists, and what is the important judgment that is involved to that particular case. We will be discussing all of this in detail. Now, do you have to refer to any other book? If you are interested, yes. If you're not interested, you can only focus on the class lectures. You can make notes out of it, and that is more than enough. If you really want to read something extra, you can read M. Lakshmikant, Polity, Indian Polity by M. Lakshmikant. That is something which can be easy. But what I would recommend here is, don't read the book first. First look into the classes. Please understand the entire background, and then if you read the book, it becomes very easy for you and you can easily, understand. If you start reading the book at the beginning itself, you will be like so confused, like what is this exactly, right? So now let us see the first important thing, that is Constitution. Now I will not waste much of time, understanding what is this Constitution, because we will start with the historical background. Because when we are discussing the salient features of Indian Constitution, I will be discussing more in detail about this particular topic, right? So Indian Constitution is nothing but it is a legal document, or it is nothing but a set of document. Now you may ask, ma'am, why do you say it is a set of document, right? Because there are some, constitutions which are not written and some of them are written. We'll discuss about this again when we are discussing salient features. I will discuss different types of constitution. See, constitution based on whether they are written or unwritten. We have written constitution, unwritten constitution. We have rigid constitution, we have flexible constitution. Similarly, we have unitary type of constitution and we have, federal constitutions. So there are different types of constitutions. We will see all of that in detail when we are discussing salient features, right? But for now understand, constitution is like a legal document, or it is a set of document. Now that is going to give us some kind of basic principles. That is nothing but constitution is like a book, okay? It is mentioning all the rules and regulations, and this is kind of, a limitation to the government. Now we all know that government has power, right? Now if you give 100% power to government, what is a possibility that the government can misuse these powers? And so we have constitution. So constitution basically, is going to limit the powers of what? Government. For now, understand this. Constitution is nothing but it is having rules and regulations that have been written in one particular place, right? Now, what we need to understand, it is a kind of a limitation to the power that the government has. Now, who is giving the power to the government? Obviously, the people. Now, we need to make sure that the interest of the people is, being protected. How can we do that? That is done by the Constitution. Constitution is going to basically give some limits, or it is going to put some limits that, okay, you are powerful. Yes, you can do only this, you cannot do this. Who is going to take care of this? This is taken care by the Constitution. So it is a kind of a legal document which is going to have some basic principles and some framework for the governing of state. As I already told you, the government has got power. This power should not be misused, and so we have this Constitution. Why? Because it is going to limit the powers of the government. How? We will discuss it throughout the entire polity lectures. Okay. Now before we start with all of this, let us understand the history. Now don't say, ma'am, you said we are going to do polity. Why are you teaching history? We are not going to go into the details of every topic of history. We are only going to look into that topic which is going to play an important role in the political point of view. Right? When I have to discuss history, it is not just polity. We have to study economy, administration, polity, etc. But in the historical background that I am going to teach you, we are not going to go into details of every war. I'll just say, okay, after this war, this is the result. We are not going to go into the course of war, what is the cause of war, etc. because we are not doing history classes. We are only going to discuss the outcome, and we are only going to see how it has impacted our Indian polity. Right? So let us have a small background here. Advent of Europeans. Now we all know that Constantinople, a very important place, and Ottoman Turk, there is a kind of a political crisis. I am not going to go into details. I am just telling you that this kind of place, which was a land route. Now this land route gets blocked. Right? I hope all of you know, because of the fall of Constantinople, what happens is this land route basically gets, blocked. Because of which, what happens is there will be a discovery of Cape of Good Hope. So all of you know, this is your Africa, right? This is your Cape of Good Hope. This gets discovered. People from here, that is European countries, they were not able to come through land because of the political crisis. So that is how they started doing a lot of navigation, and they were able to find out the Cape of Good Hope, right? So discovery of Cape of Good Hope. Because of this, what happened here is new people started coming from the European part to the other parts of the world, right? And you also need to understand that a lot of demand for Indian goods, Indian cotton, raw materials, Indian spices, all these things had a very good demand. Now, because they were not able to trade via land route, they had to find some other alternative. And what was that alternative? That alternative was the sea route. Not just this, we also have to understand that there was a lot of advancement in shipbuilding and navigation. Because they were able to do a lot of shipbuilding, there was a lot of navigation that was happening. Also the discovery of the Cape of Good Hope gave them some hope that they can come to other parts of the world. And not just that, there was a lot of competition among the European powers. We see that the Portuguese come, then the Dutch come, then the Daves, then the French, English or British basically come. So you can see there's a kind of a competition that is already there in European nation. All these things you will discuss more in detail in history, but I'm just giving you a background here. Next is also about the blue water policy. The first person who came to India was Vasco da Gama. After that, Portuguese were able to come, right? They were able to have good relations here. Obviously, Indians also wanted trade, and they're always, what you meant to say, welcoming. We have Atiti Devo Bhava. Anybody who comes to India, we welcome them, we treat them very good. But similarly, when people came from outside, we always welcome them, we always had that trade relation with other different parts of the world. Similarly, there was Almeida, Francisco de Almeida. He was the first governor of Portuguese in India. Now, there is a blue water policy. I'll tell you what is this blue water policy. See, he knew that if he has to control India, he had to control Indian Ocean. Because automatically people were able to come to India because of this particular sea route, right? So he knew that this person knew that if he wanted to keep his control on India, what he had to do here is he had to keep control on Indian Ocean. And that is why he came up with blue water policy. And what is this blue water policy? He told that anybody who is coming to India or anybody who is traveling in Indian Ocean had to take the permission of Portuguese. They had to take the permission of Portuguese. If the Portuguese give permission, that is when you can come into India, or you cannot come into India. So this is some kind of blue water policy that was put by the Portuguese so that they can rule or they can have this trade happening with India. Because automatically if other people are coming, there will be competition, and who likes competition, right? So nobody wanted competition. Similarly, Portuguese also did not like competition, right? So that is why they came up with something called as blue water policy, wherein any other people who are coming into India need to take their permission. So that is how you can also see British East India Company also got this permission to come to India long back, but it took around 8 to 9 years for them to come into India. Okay, and it was not like as soon as they came, they got very good, nice welcoming or something like that, because they already had Portuguese who were already waiting, because they did not allow them to set up their factory as soon as they come, right? We'll see that now. The first thing is, here starts with your historical background. The first important date that you all need to remember here is is 31st December 1600. Now why ma'am this date? This is when East India Company, or basically you can say the people of British, they wanted to have a trading company. That is when British East India Company got a Royal Charter. Okay, you can see that British presence in India began with the East India Company. They got rights or trading rights by what? Queen Elizabeth I. And when was that? It was 31st December 1600. That is when British East India Company was able to get the Royal Charter. This Royal Charter is something like a license. Okay, it is like a license that British East India Company can do their trade in India. Now, you need to understand there is a small technical thing here. It is not just the license. Okay, it is not just the license to trade, because not just trade. I'll tell you why. It was a kind of political support. Now, why do I say this is a kind of a political support? Now, let us understand that when British East India Company came into India, they just did not do trade. If they had to do trade also, they had to do some kind of war with other countries. I already, you have seen that Portuguese is there. Now they have to do a lot of, issues with Portuguese, or they have to kind of get involved in the war. And when they can get involved in the war, only when they got some kind of political support. So British East India Company was able to get political support along with the trade license in this particular Royal Charter. So this is something which is not mentioned in books. This is something that you need to understand from here. So what happens here is 31st December 1600, set of people, they say that we want to form a company, that is British East India Company. They go to Queen Elizabeth I. She said, okay, we will give you permission, and that is Royal Charter will be given. And from this Royal Charter, it is like that East India Company has a monopoly of what? Trade. Please understand what is the meaning of monopoly here. Mono means what? Only one person. Monopoly of trade means only East India Company can do trade, okay, in India. No other companies can come into India. This is what basically was the Royal Charter. Okay. Now see, you need to understand British East India Company did not had any intention to, do administration in India. When they came to India, they were shocked. That is, British East India Company was shocked. The reason why they were shocked is because that much amount of wealth was present in India. In Hindi there is a saying called, muh khula ka khula reh gaya. Means it says that they were so much amazed by looking at the jewels that were present in India, or the amount of wealth that was present in India. They were so much overwhelmed. When they came, they had no intentions, okay, to do administrative control or take care of political control or something like that. They came here only for the pure trade. But over a period of time, what happens is they were able to find the weakness that was there in India. And that is when they started thinking, okay, we have an opportunity here, right? So you need to understand that 1600, they came to India, or they got Royal Charter to come to India. Now, next thing that we need to understand here is, let us see a timeline. 1600, they got the Royal Charter. Good. But they come to India for the first time in 1609. So what happened in these 3 years? In these 9 years basically. You can see that they were struggling. Who were struggling? That the East India Company was struggling to come to India. I already told you in the previous slide about the blue water policy. That is, Portuguese were not even allowing the other countries to come into India because they knew it is going to be a very tough competition for them. Right? So it almost took so long for the British East India Company to come to India itself. And it is not that, in 1600, who comes is Captain Hawkins. He comes. At that point of time, you need to understand who was the king. Jahangir. He comes to Jahangir's court, and what happens, Jahangir will not allow the Captain Hawkins to, set up the factory. When they come, it is like they are very not so welcoming, not welcomed, you can say. And he goes back. Here in the background, so this is happening in India. You need to understand in 1603, this Queen Elizabeth basically dies. And next comes the James I. He is the king. Okay. When this Captain Hawkins comes back, then King James was like, how did India even reject us? How is it even possible? So that is when he sends another important person. He is Thomas Doe. Very, very important character. Give him 5 star. Why 5 star? Because very important person, right? So when Thomas Roe comes back, what he does? He influences Jahangir. Means he understood how to please Jahangir. Whatever Jahangir wanted, right? Like it could be foreign goods, luxury gifts. He kind of convinced Jahangir that he wants to establish a British East India Company. So basically what happens is Sir Thomas Roe, he influences Jahangir, and over a period of time, Jahangir gives a letter in 1615. This letter is also available on your Google, right? You can see the letter in which Jahangir says that we are very pleased to have British East India Company come to India and do trade. And here you can see that there is a battle. That is between whom? It is between the Portuguese and it is between the British, wherein British was able to defeat the Portuguese, and this is how Portuguese rule basically comes to an end over here. And they were able to have their factory. This is basically what happens. Now, before we go to the next, I also want to, tell you some other things. So, as I was telling you about the timeline, you need to also understand some of the important factories that were being built by, or that were being, taken care by your British East India Company. In 1611, okay, they were able to build their first factory in Andhra Pradesh in Machulipattanam. Okay, this is something which is very, very important. After this, they were able to build many factories. I am not mentioning about all the factories, but I will mention some important factories. Now, why only these factories? You will understand this over a period of time. Okay, the first, another important factory that was built was in 1639. Okay, at Madras, and here this factory is known as St. Fort. Okay, it is called as Fort St. George. The factory name which was there in Madras is known as Fort St. George. This is one important factory. The other important factory was 1668. Okay, this was in Bombay. Okay, and the name of this fort was Bombay Castle. Right, and then in some books it's 1669 and in some books it's 1670. Okay, and that was in Bengal, or it was basically Calcutta. Right, this is Fort Williams. So please understand why only these three. This is also not important. This is important because it is the first factory that they built, and this was a temporary factory. It was not a permanent factory. This was in the southern part of India. You can see it is not related to the places where Jahangir was involved. In the southern part, because Jahangir did not give them permission in 1609, so they had to find out an alternative to find a factory, and they built a factory in Machulipattanam or Masulipatanam, okay, in Andhra Pradesh. There are two names, right? Now in 1639 in Madras they were able to build a fort, okay, or they were able to build a factory, not fort. They were able to build the factory, right? Similarly, this was also a factory, this was also a factory. Now what exactly happened in this factory? See, anything that they wanted to trade, it was acting like a storage. It was a place where these people were able to stay, you know, these British East India Company people or officers, workers, whoever there, they were able to stay in these particular forts. They were able to do all the administration from these particular forts itself. Now, why I have made sure that these forts are there, we will discuss about these things a little more in upcoming lecture, okay? But now focus on these. They were able to build a lot of factories across India, right? And after 1615, Jahangir also gave them kind of freedom, and Jahangir also told that if you need any help from me, I can also do that. He was so much influenced by Sir Thomas Roe that he gave permission and also gave them some kind of rights or freedom, and he also showed support that British East India Company can come and do its trade in India. Right? After that, they were able to build in a lot of companies. I have mentioned about the major ones over here, right? Next is a turning point. So far, everything's good, right? Everything is understandable. You are able to understand that the British East India Company came to India and they were so mesmerized with India's, what you mean to say, wealth, etc. They were so happy. They also came, Jahangir welcomed them for the second time, and they were able to build all their factories. Everything's good, right? Everything so far is so good because they are not getting involved in our political matters. Everything's fine. But there is a turning point. See, Battle of Karnal. Most of the people do not tell about this battle, right? The reason why I am telling this pattern is because this is the turning point. Now, please give 5-star to this. Why am I saying this? Is because you will understand. This is also called as famous Nadir Shah's invasion. Okay, at this point of time, this was somewhere in 1739. Okay. Now, what happens in this case here is the Mughal empire here or emperors here were very weak. Okay, the rulers of Mughal became very weak here, or you can say weak rulers of Mughal. And Nadir Shah was able to invade Mughal. And when he invaded Mughal, now imagine, once when Mughal had entire north to south extension of India, at this point of time the emperor became very, very small. He was able to loot Delhi like anything. And I'll tell you one thing. Once you show your weakness, everybody will take, advantage of it. Similarly, British were able to find the weakness, and that weakness was here when the rulers of the Mughal were very weak. They were not aware of it. I mean, the Britishers were not aware of it because they were only involved in what you mean to say trade. But now what happens is they will be able to see that there is a power vacuum. Means nobody is there to take control. That is when that strikes their mind that we should take control of India. And if we are able to take control of India, we will become very, very rich. That is what they knew, or that is what they were aware about. Right? So Battle of Karnal in 1739, Nadir Shah's invasion basically, made a gateway for the British people to do administration in India. Okay? Here, this is called as imperialism. What is imperialism? Imperialism is they're trying to expand their rule in other countries or expand their rule in other parts of the world. I also want to quote here one more important thing. China is presently doing, at this point of time, I'm telling you this, it is trying to do neo-imperialism. That is new kind of imperialism. You know what it is trying to do? It is trying to give funds to a very poor economic countries, or the countries which are having very poor economy, or they are like underdeveloped countries. Give them some kind of funding, say that we will do infrastructure development. And over a period of time, what basically happens here is that when they are not able to pay back that money, China will take control of the same port, or China will take control of that particular infrastructure for a longer period of time. And China can use this as a military base. Similarly, what's happening here is, in this particular battle, Britishers were able to see that there is power vacuum. I always will tell you, even if you have some power, never ever leave that power. Why am I telling you is because you are powerful. If you show your weakness to anybody, what happens here is that they will take advantage of this. In one of the history books, it's very clearly said that if this invasion never happened, let us understand the meaning, or let us understand how important this event is. If this Battle of Karnal would have not happened, maybe British did not come to India, or they were already there in India, they would have not ruled. You need to understand that probably there is a possibility that British could never rule India, or even if they would rule it, maybe in a later days, not at this early stage. So the major important turning point of British entering into India is the Battle of Karnal. Okay, they were able to see how weak the rulers of Mughal were. They were able to see that there is power vacuum, right? So because of this, what happens here is that British East India Company were able to take charge. They were able to see that they have an opportunity here, right? And because of this opportunity, they were able to do the first battle, that is Battle of Plassey in 1757. And this was like a mock test for them. Why do I say mock test? Because they were able to easily win. Okay, they were able to easily win, and that is when gave them more power. Okay, because of this more power, they came up with more battle, and the major important battle is Battle of Buxar. Battle of Buxar in 1764. In both the battles, Britishers were able to win very easily, and after this, there will be a very important treaty that will be signed between Mughals and the Britishers in the year 1765, and this is called Treaty of Allahabad, right? This is called as what? Treaty of Allahabad. We'll discuss about that treaty now, right? This is called as Treaty of Allahabad in 1765. What happens in this treaty? Look, what happens here is there is a dual system. Okay, dual system, basically I'll tell you why. Because in this, after the loss, what happens here is Mughal had to give Diwani rights. What is Diwani rights? Diwani rights were rights to collect tax. See, I want you to understand, so far here, whatever is happening, okay? So far here, whatever is happening in British or in India, it is called as plundering. British were plundering the resources of India, plundering or looting the resources of India. The reason is because they had no right to do it. Means they were taking a lot of money going to British, they were becoming very rich. But from here, that is when they got Diwani rights. That is when they become legitimate. That is when they become what? Legitimate basically means it gives them power. What is that power? So far they were called as looting. They were looting India. But now they are having a powerful place in India. That is, they have got Diwani rights. What is this Diwani rights basically? It is a right to collect tax. Okay, they were able to collect tax. Now what you need to understand here is there is a dual government that's happening. I'll tell you what is a dual government. So there is a dual government. What is this dual government? British East India Company is collecting the tax. Okay. Now there's one more person here, the Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II. Okay. Now he is taking care of the administration. Now tell me something. Will this administration be correct? Because he is not collecting the money. How can he do the welfare of the people? Can he do the welfare of the people? Is it possible? Of course not. Because somebody else is collecting. Okay, instead of British, I'll write it as East India Company. Okay, East India Company is collecting the taxes. Correct? If East India Company is collecting the taxes and Shah Alam II is not collecting the taxes, what is he doing? He is doing the administration. Can he do welfare for the people? Automatically, no. He cannot do any kind of welfare for the people. Automatically, people will feel bad. People will do some kind of aggression. People will show some kind of aggression. Right? So this is something that we need to understand. Here you can see dual system in Bengal. That is nothing but what? And this happens to be from 1765 to 1772. So you can see for these many years this dual government happens, and unfortunately this dual government is a big failure. I told you the reason why it is a big failure, because somebody is collecting the taxes, somebody else have to do the welfare. Is it even possible? If I have to do the welfare, I need some funds, right? Now does this Shah Alam II have funds? Obviously no. If he does not have funds, how is he going to do welfare? Is it possible? Of course not. So this is something that you need to understand here. That is, revenue rights he got from whom? He got it from the Mughal emperor, and then from police and criminal administration he got it from the Nawab of Bengal. Again, let's not go into details here because this you will study in history, but I am giving you the background. In Treaty of Allahabad, the revenue collection rights are with British East India Company, and administration to take care of the people is with Shah Alam II. And this is not correct, because somebody is collecting the tax and somebody else has to do it, is not going to be good, right? So because of this, what happens here is there will be a regulating act. Now before the regulating act, some series of things that happen. What is the series of things that happen here is, there is a most important thing that happens here is, the first important reason is the Bengal famine. I already gave you an example right now that what is happening here is the welfare of the people is supposed to be taken care by whom? Shah Alam II. Does he have money? No. Automatically, because of less rains, okay, what happens here is in 1769, due to less rainfall and shortage of food, okay, 1/3 of the population, in Bengal die because of the famine, die because they were not having food to eat. This is one of the reasons that, led to the regulating act. Another important reason that we have here is, a lot of corruption. A lot of corruption by the East India Company officials were corrupt. Okay? Because of this corruption, basically what happened here is that the company, British East India Company, or the company which was doing very good, was not now able to do a lot of good things. Right? Apart from this, what you need to understand here is tea trade. Okay? British East India Company would do tea trade with America. And this tea trade with America actually got reduced. I'll tell you what happened. Was reduced. Why this got reduced, I'll tell you that. See, first try to understand that America would get only tea from British East India Company. Before this, So after some time, what happened here is Dutch were able to, do some kind of smuggling and give tea to Americans. Okay, that is, tea was basically smuggled and they were able to give it to America. And because of that, what happened here is the tea that was there in the, factories of British East India Company, that was there in the factories itself, and it was getting destroyed. So because of the tea trade with America got reduced, they were not able to get a lot of profit. And the last or the major important thing that happened was in 1772, the company, that is East India Company, had losses. And because of this loss, see, in all these years, the company did not give any profit to the British government. Please try and understand. If British government has given you the trade license, you need to give something, no? The British East India Company had to give some money to it. Yes or no? Because they're getting the support from the British government. But at this point of time, you can see that because of all these reasons, the British East India Company did not give any money to British government. British government was like, okay, maybe today it is in loss, tomorrow we will get more money. They were quiet. But in 1772, British East India Company asked for £1 million loan. Okay, this much amount of loan British East India Company is asking whom? The British government. Now, it's like the British government has what? It has got the power. Again, you can see here what's happening here is in 1772, the British East India Company was in loss completely. Because of this loss, basically what happens is they go to ask loan. Now you tell me, any farmer who goes to ask loan to the bank, will the bank give the loan just like that? What do the bank ask? It asks, give us some kind of proof, some kind of mortgage. It could be gold, it could be land. Similarly, here also, you can see that when British East India Company goes to the British government for asking loan, they have a give and take policy. The British government said, okay, let us take a new slide here and explain it a little more in detail. Now see, what happened here is you have British government, right? Now you have East India Company. Because British government was able to give them charter, what did the British government expect? Them to give some kind of profit, right? But in 1772, in the company, instead of giving profit, is now asking for what? Loan. Now the British government is very happy because it is now going to get powers. So British government says, we will do give and take policy. So what is this give and take policy? What are we supposed to give so that you can, give us money? Right? That is when British government says, please look into this, this is very, very important. British government says, give us control of company. So British government says, take loan, but we will regulate the company. I hope the background is very clear, right? So you need to understand that from 1765 to 1772, a lot of issues happened due to which British East India Company was not able to, give that profit to the British government. Over a period of time in 1772, what happens here is that the East India Company was facing so much of loss. So that is when they went to ask loan. And when they were about to give loan, they said that, okay, we will give you money, but you have to give us the control of East India Company. And that is how British East India Company had to, lose its power. It has to give its control to the British government. And that is when comes what? They wanted to do what? They wanted to regulate the company. Because they wanted to regulate the company, the first important act that was being passed is called Regulating Act of 1773. I hope the entire background of Regulating Act is clear to you, right? So let us do a long story short. I will do a small quick revision and then we will see everything from the beginning, right? We will start it from 1600. 1600, British East India Company got the Royal Charter, right? They came to India in 1609, Captain Hawkins, right? But what happened is, Jahangir did not allow them to come. Later, what happens here is, in 1611, they built their first factory, that was in Andhra Pradesh, okay, in Masulipatanam or Machilipattanam, there are two names, right? And later on, I already told you that they were able to build in a lot of factories. Here happens another battle between Britishers and Portuguese, where Britishers were able to win. And like this, you saw that in 1615, Jahangir basically welcomed British people and they were able to set up their factories. And like this, they set up many factories in India. I already told you to remember three important factories here. One in Madras, it was in 1639. Another was in Bombay, that was in 1668, right? And the other was in Calcutta, and this was somewhere in 1669. In some books they've already given it as 1670 as well, right? This is Fort St. George, Bombay Castle, Fort Williams, right? These are the three important companies that we have seen. After this, a very important turning point that we saw was Nadir Shah's invasion in 1739, and then we have seen in 1757 Battle of Plassey, and then we have seen 1764 Battle of Buxar. This is another important turning point. This is another important turning point. Here, British was, okay, instead of British, it is East India Company was able to, see weakness. Okay, this is something very important. Here, they were able to, get the Diwani rights. Here, again, in 65, you have the Treaty of Allahabad. Correct? In the Treaty of Allahabad, East India Company got Diwani rights, right? And Diwani rights was nothing but it was able to collect the taxes. They were able to collect the taxes, but the welfare of the people was not at all happening. After this, okay, here in 1769, because of Bengal famine, 1/3 of the population was able to, not being able to sustain, and they died because of the hunger. This was one of the reasons. Apart from that, we also saw that in 1772, the company was facing huge amount of losses, because of which they went to ask loan to British government. And when British government says, we will do give and take policy. In the give and take policy, they said that, okay, we will give you money, but instead you have to give us the regulating power of company. Right? So this is how the British government was able to take control of British East India Company. And then we have next, that is the Regulating Act of 1773. We have to see the Regulating Act of 1773. What exactly happens here? How are they trying to control? Before we go to this, let us go to the black slide. Now, please understand, in the Regulating Act of 1773, what happens here is, what are the provisions? Before, just in the before slide, I told you that there are three important factories. right? Now, how British government would control East India Company before this? It's not that they were not able to control or they did not have an eye, but most of the power was with the British East India Company itself. Now, see, what used to happen here is there are three important factories, okay? This is one factory, okay? This is one more factory here, and there's one more factory here. Please try and understand, this is your Madras, okay? And what is that factory name? It is called as Fort St. George, right? Similarly, this is the factory in Bengal or in Calcutta, right? This is called as Fort Williams, not St. The next important factory that is there in Bengal, or it is also called as Kolkata. In this Calcutta, which is nothing but what? Okay. The next important factory that we have is in Bengal. It is in Calcutta, and the name of the factory is Fort Williams. And then the next important one is in Bombay, which is also called as Bombay Castle. Now please try and understand, each one of them, each factory had a governor. Here one governor, and there was one more governor here. All these governors would report to a body which is called as Court of Directors, and they were 24 in number. Okay, please try and understand how is the entire administration is that's happening before the Regulating Act of 1773. Okay, in 1773, before the Regulating Act, we have a governor of Bengal, we have a governor of Madras, we have governor of Bombay. All these governors will report whom? Who will report this Court of Directors, who are 24 in number. Now these people will later report to whatever is happening in India to British government. This is the entire administration. I hope this is clear, right? Now listen, please understand here, the governor of Madras had powers. What are the powers that he had, or that person had? That he can make laws. He can also make sure that the laws are implemented. That is nothing but the legislative powers and the executive powers. Correct? Similarly, the Bengal also had two powers, that is legislative powers and executive powers. And similarly, the governor of Bombay also had same thing, that is legislative powers and executive powers. Please try to understand this a little in detail here, right? We have three important factories. That is why I made you remember that these are the three important factories, and from that factories itself there are governors. There is a governor, and these governors are going to report to the Court of Directors, and these Court of Directors, who are 24 in number, they will in turn go and talk to British government. Okay, this is what is happening. But in Regulating Act, the first important provision of Regulating Act 1773 is saying that, okay, what we will do here is, see, this is a decentralized model. Can you see? Decentralized model. There is no one center. Okay, there is a power that is given to Governor of Madras, power that is given to Governor of Bengal, power that is given to Governor of Bombay as well. Okay, that means whatever laws and regulations that is required for Bombay will be taken care by whom? Will be taken care by the Governor of Bombay. Similarly, whatever rules and regulations are required for Bengal will be taken care by the Governor of Bengal, and similarly for Madras as well. But now what is happening is, so in this case what will happen is there will be kind of a little bit of welfare that is also being seen, because they will look at the welfare of this people of Madras, here the welfare of Bengal, here the welfare of Bombay. But now what is happening here is, you need to understand that it is also called as first step to centralization. I'll tell you why this is called as first step to centralization, because the provision 1 of Regulating Act says that the Governor of Bengal will now become Governor General of Bengal. That means the powers of, especially the law-making power of Madras is given to Bengal. Similarly, the law-making power of Bombay is also given to whom? Is given to the Governor of Bengal. So the Governor of Bengal is now going to become what? Governor General of Bengal. That means what? We are trying to give the powers of Madras and the powers of Bombay to Bengal. Please try and understand. There is no need of you to by heart. You just need to understand. This is the first step to centralization. The reason is because they are now losing the law-making power here, right? So the first provision says that Governor of Bengal will become the Governor General of Bengal, and he will be given with Executive Council of 4 members. Please note this point, that is Executive Council of 4 members. That means Governor General will not be alone. He will be given with 4 important people, and they are called Executive Council. Okay, they are called as what? Executive Council of 4 members. Who? The Governor General of Bengal. And the first Governor General of Bengal was William Bentinck. Right? It was he is the Governor General. Okay. Now he also has how many people? 4 people with him. And Governor of Madras, Governor of Bombay will act as subordinates. Means they will also act as subordinates to whom? They will act as subordinates to William Bentinck. The first important provision. I hope the first important provision is clear to everybody. That is nothing but to, do centralization. It is also called as what? It is also called as, it is initiation, because it's not the first step. Because the first step of centralization happens later, when these will be completely eliminated. But now they are not completely eliminated. It is just a step. Okay. That is why it is called as first step towards centralization. The first step towards centralization is, it is actually a baby walking, you can say, a first step towards centralization. Okay, the first provision of Regulating Act of 1773 is also called as Governor of Bengal, is now called the Governor General of Bengal, and he is given with Executive Council of 4 members, and the Governor of Madras and the Governor of Bombay will act as a subordinate to the Governor General of Bengal. This is something that we need to understand here. But, okay, try to understand here. If Governor General of Bengal, if he wants to pass a law, there is a condition. And what is that condition? Out of these 4 members, okay, at least 2 members should say yes. Okay, that means you can see that there is a limitation to the power here. He is the Governor General, that's no doubt. Okay, but this Governor General's decision is not alone. This Governor General, if he wants to pass a law, he need 2 people from his Executive Council to say yes. If 2 people does not say, then what will happen is this person will not be able to pass a law. That means not powerful at all. Because his entire decision is not valid. If 2 members do not agree to him, then what's the point, right? So here you need to understand the first provision. I am repeating it again. The first provision of Regulating Act says the Governor of Bengal will become the Governor General of the Bengal, which will have Executive Council of 4 members, out of which 2 should agree if he has to pass any kind of law. This is the first important provision. I hope this is clear to everybody, right? Yes. So the first thing is Governor of Bengal will become the Governor General of Bengal. Now there is some changes in the Court of Directors also. I told you in the previous slide about the Court of Directors. Court of Directors are those people who will now report to the British government, and Court of Directors, they will get all the reports from the governors of each and every provinces, right? Now 1/4 of them used to retire every year. So look, the term was increased to 4 years. So before it was just 1 year. I mean, whoever were there, they were how many in number? 24 in number. These people were valid only for 1 year. But now what they do in this provision here is, from 1 year, they increase their term to 4 years. Okay, that means the court of directors who are 24 in number will be in power for how many years? Will be in power for 4 years. But 1/4 of them, if there are 100, 25 of them, I mean, they are not 100, they are how many? They are 24. That means how many of them? Around 6 of them are going to get retired every year. So around 6 members will get retired every year. But there is a provision of re-election. Now, provision of re-election was absent. That means these people who were there once as a court of director will not become another time the court of directors. Okay, and 24 such directors were present. I already told you that the court of directors were how many in number? 24 in number. They were there valid only for 1 year. From now onwards, they will be valid for 4 years. But every year, 1/4 of them would get retired. So this is something that we need to understand. Another important thing that we need to understand here is the establishment of Supreme Court. This happened in Calcutta again, and it was in 1774. Okay, here we had Chief Justice or Chief Judge. He was Elijah Impey, was a chief judge. Now, I wanted to understand here, when you see this regulating act, it was not a good thing. It was a failure actually. Why there was a failure is because here the Chief Justice would always, not allow the British or not allow the Governor General of Bengal to basically pass any law. There was always a conflict that was there between the Chief Judge and the Governor General. Okay, so for that we also have amending acts and we have Pitt's India Act and all of that. But here you need to understand that the Supreme Court was established in 1774 and the first judge was Elijah Impey. Okay, this is something that we need to understand. And British government thought that the Governor General of Bengal, that is William Bentinck, and the Chief Judge would basically work together for the betterment. But that's not how it ended. Over a period of time, you will see that these people were, literally fighting with each other. So automatically when they're fighting, how will the administration be good, right? So this is another thing that we need to understand. And the company charter was extended or will be renewed every year. Now see, if there is a regulating act, okay, in 1773, and if that same thing continues, will it be good? No, right? So after every 20 years, you need to understand that the company charter will be revised after every 20 years. Whether the trade will extend, whether the trade will not extend, what will be the, administrative powers. To check all of this, what will happen is every 20 years, they will keep extending. One more very important thing that happens here is that the British officials, okay, that is whatever East India Company officials were there, they were not allowed to take any gifts. Okay, they were not allowed to take any gifts. This was basically done so that we can do or reduce the corruption. So another important point that you need to remember here is that is East India Company officials were not allowed to take any kind of personal gifts, because what happened here is over a period of time they were able to see that the company is in loss but the officials are getting rich. That is because there was a lot of corruption. So hence, to avoid corruption, this particular provision was being added. Okay. Now lastly, what we have to understand is the demerits. Why there was this thing that got failed, that is East India Company basically fails, or you can say Regulating Act of 1773 basically fails. Why did it fail? The major important reason is the Governor General of Bengal and the Chief Judge, there was a lot of conflict here. There was no clear cut power discrimination, like who is taking care of which part, who is taking care of revenue collection, who is taking care of, you know, civil matters, who is taking care of criminal matters. All these kind of proper, you know, separation was not there. That was absent. And because of this absence, basically what happened here is there was so much of conflict between these two. Okay, and another important thing that we need to understand is that the Governor General had Executive Council of how many members? 4 members. Now here you need to understand that the Governor of Bengal was so much confused that even if he wanted to pass a law, these people were not allowed. So like, who is more powerful? Is it the Governor General of Bengal or is it the council? There is no power discrimination, or there is no power, clear-cut power separation over here. Apart from this, there's one more problem that was happening here is the Governor of Madras and the Governor of Bombay, they were not reporting to the Bengal. They were taking laws again. I mean, they were still doing laws for themselves. And when they were asked, they were like, there's no time. Because of the time that we, you know, to communicate to Bengal and then take permission to be very difficult, so we would take. So like this, there were a lot of demerits that are there in this particular regulating act. Okay. Now I also want to tell you one more thing. This regulating act have 3 names. You need to understand that in place of any of these, if they're asking something else, they are the same itself. These regulating acts are also called as, you know, they're called regulating acts. Because why they're called regulating act? Because they wanted to regulate the company, East India Company. They were also called as East India Company Acts. Why? Because they wanted to regulate them. And they were also called as Charter Acts. And why it is called Charter Act? Because they were changing these charters every 20 years. So all the 3 names are the same, don't get confused. Regulating Act is also same, East India Company Act is also same, Charter Act is also same. So before we go to next, okay, I will just do a small, you know, what you mean to say, brainstorming here. We have seen up to 1772 what happened. In 1773 comes the Regulating Act, okay, which is a big failure. We've also discussed the reasons why it is a big failure. After this, basically, according to this charter of 20 years, the next regulating act was supposed to be of Act of 1793. And then we have 1813, then we have 1833, and then we have 1853. Okay. So, from this period, or this period basically is called as company rule. Why it is called as company rule is because the company is taking care of our India, basically. Now, please understand here, the British government does not want to take governance of India. No, please don't get confused. British government only want to regulate what? Only want to regulate the company, not India. They will give you such kind of statements that, you know, British government want to take cover, you know, govern or regulate India. No. British government is only wanting to regulate the East India Company. Please try and understand this. Okay. Now, you need to understand that from 1773 to 20 years is 1793. This is the entire timeline. And this timeline is called as company rule because company is ruling India. Okay. We will see about the crown rule in upcoming lectures. Don't worry. But for now, you need to understand that this is called company rule. And here, in these 3 years or in this 20 years, there will be other acts. They are not called regulating acts though. They are called amending acts. There will be 3 amending acts basically. Amending Act of 1781, Amending Act of 1784 and 1786. Both of them are together because both of them are Pitt's India Act. Okay, Pitts is the name of the then Prime Minister. Okay, he was the youngest Prime Minister of British government that time. He, you know, came up with Pitt's India Act in 1784 and he also came up with another provision in 1786. Hence, it is called Pitt's India Act. We will discuss about these in the upcoming lectures. I hope this particular lecture is clear to you. We have seen the background. We have seen how Europeans came to India and how British East India Company came to India. What were the issues that the British East India Company faced? We have also seen the advent of Europeans in India. We have seen how Jahangir was not ready to give this particular power for them to trade in India and how over a period of time British were not just able to trade, but they were also do administration in India, right? We have seen different types of wars, what are the turning points. We have seen about the provisions of Regulating Act, what are the demerits of Regulating Act, and in tomorrow's lecture or in upcoming lectures, we will see about how the Amending Acts of 1781 and Amending Acts of 1784, that is also called as Pitt's India Act, and other points. Hello students, I welcome you all back to Indian Polity Lectures by Azad ICS Academy. In yesterday's lecture, we had discussed about the Regulating Act of 1773. Today we will see the next act, and before we go to that act, I will also have a small quick review of what we had discussed in yesterday's class, like a summary, right? So that there is a continuity. So we had seen that British East India Company got the Royal Charter in the year 1600, right? Similarly, we saw that they were able to establish their first factory, and we also saw that the Jahangir gave them, farman, or they gave them kind of a letter that British East India Company can do trade in India, and also gave their support. After that, we had also seen that there were different factories that were being set up. And the most important turning point that happened was in 1739, that is Nadir Shah's invasion. And then we have also seen about different battles like Battle of Buxar and Battle of Plassey, right? 1764. The next important thing that we need to understand here is in 1765 to 1772, okay, there will be dual government, and this is also called as Treaty of Allahabad, that was signed in 1765. Okay, under this there will be dual government, that is the British government or British East India Company basically gets the Diwani rights, that they can collect the taxes, and the administration was seen by the Mughal emperor, that is Shah Alam II. And because of this, basically what happens here is that these people will be having a dual government. The tax was collected by somebody else and the administration was done by somebody else. That is why there was a lot of issue, and because of this, here you can see that in 1769, this is one of the reasons why there was Regulating Act. There will be Bengal famines, wherein 1/3 of the population basically dies due to hunger, right? Apart from this, we've also seen that in 1772, the British East India Company was facing a lot of losses. Because of this, what happens here is they will have to take loan from the British government. And under this, the British government says that, yes, we will give you a loan, but you will also have to give us something back. And what they had to give us? They had to give the regulation of the company, or they had to give the governing power of the company to the British government. Apart from this, we have also seen other reasons like tea trade loss, corruption, etc. Right? So these were some of the reasons why the Regulating Act came into picture, right? Apart from this, I also told you the three important names. That is nothing but what? The Regulating Act. They are also called as, or they are also called as East India Company Act, or they are also called as Charter Act. Okay. Now, after this, we have seen about the Regulating Act of 1773. Now, please understand this Regulating Act, British government wants to control East India Company, not India. Please understand, British government wants to control what? The mechanism of the company, the East India Company, not India. Okay, here you need to be very clear that British government want to control East India Company. Because sometimes UPSC will ask you question whether it is India or East India Company. British wanted to control East India Company in 1773. Okay. In this, the first important provision that was mentioned here is, that is, Governor of Bengal becomes Governor General of Bengal. Okay. And he is supposed to be your William Bentinck. He will be given with the Executive Council of 4 members. So to assist him, there will be 4 members, and Governor of Madras and Governor of Bombay, all their rights of lawmaking will also be given to the Governor of Bengal. Apart from this is the first important thing. The second important thing that we need to understand is about the Court of Directors. So before 1773, what used to happen was that there will be Governor of Madras, Governor of Bombay, and Governor of Bengal. All the three governors would report to Court of Directors, who were 24 in number, and this would report to British government. This is the mechanism that was being followed before. But now what happens here is, and the tenure of this particular Court of Directors was 1 year. But after Regulating Act of 1773, the tenure of these particular Court of Directors will be from 1 year to 4 years. Means before who are valid for 1 year, now they can be Court of Directors for 4 years. But every year, 1/4 of them get retired. Apart from this, we also need to understand that there will be no re-elections. Okay, this is the second important provision. The third important provision that was there was the Supreme Court was established, who will take care of all civil and criminal proceedings. Okay, and this happened in the year 1774, right? And we have the Chief Judge Elage Impey. Last but not the least provision that was there was your British officials or East India officials will not take or will not accept any kind of gifts so that they can avoid corruption. So this is what we have seen in the background in yesterday's class. And we've also seen that there were a lot of issues when it comes to Regulating Act. And what was the issue that was there in the Regulating Act was the British government thought that the William Bentinck and Elage Impey would be like brothers. They would work like friends. They will work together with respect. But what basically happened is they were fighting with each other, right? So hence comes the first important. Now this is not the Regulating Act. These are called amending acts. They are also called amendment acts, or it is also called Act of Settlement, because they are kind of settling the issues, right? So the first important act that we have here is the Act of Settlement of 1781. I hope the background is very clear to you. I hope the entire Regulating Act is clear. We have seen why Regulating Act was being put up, right? And we have seen what are the issues that were there with Regulating Act. Now we will see the Act of Settlement of 1781. This is also called as Amending Act, okay, or Amendment Act of 1781. The major important change that happens here is, that is, you can see a clear separation of powers. Especially between whom? It is between the Governor General of Bengal and the Supreme Court. It said that now more power was given to whom? More power was given to the Governor General of Bengal. What does the British government say here is, you can see that the judiciary will do separate work and the Governor General of Bengal will do the separate work. They are not going to sit together, or they are not going to work together. How is it? That is nothing but Governor General of Bengal and his council, that is 4 members, Executive Council, which is 4 members, they are going to take decisions on all revenue related matters. How the tax is going to be collected, how the trade is happening, all the revenue related matters. Who's going to make laws? It is the Governor General of Bengal. And the Supreme Court will not intervene. The Supreme Court will not have any kind of interference. So this was a clear cut. You can see there was a clear cut separation between the judiciary and executive, right? So here you can see what is the important, only one important provision that you need to understand here is that separation of powers between the Governor General of Bengal and the Supreme Court. So basically what happened here is that the Governor General would pass any law and Supreme Court would not allow them to pass that law. This was the issue that we had seen. But now what is happening here is that they are giving more power to the Governor General of Bengal. How are they giving more power to the Governor General of Bengal? They are saying that Governor General of Bengal and his executive council of 4 members will take all the decisions when it comes to revenue related matters. And the Supreme Court will not intervene in these matters. This is what the Act of Settlement of 1781 basically talks about. Now comes a very, very important act, which is also called as Pitt's India Act, okay, or the Amending Act of 1784. Now, what happens here is, so far we had seen that there is Court of Directors, right? Who are how many? 24 in number. Now, those people were looking at all the matters. They were looking at the commercial matters, they were looking at the military matters, administrative matters, political matters, everything was looked by only them. To streamline everything properly, what happens here is, Pitts, he was a youngest Prime Minister of British at that point of time, or British government. He came up with a very important thing here. Okay, he did 2-3 things. I'll tell you what are those slowly. The first important thing is he introduced the concept of called as dual government. Now, why do I say dual government? See here, he said that let us divide the work. What is that work? All the commercial activities. Okay, now see, all what does the commercial activities include? The first thing is tax collection. Okay, now trade. However, whatever revenue was there, the revenue generation part, all the commercial activities were taken care by Court of Directors who were 24 in number. There is no change. Now we have seen about the 24 members. They will be valid for 4 years. 1/4 of them will get retired every year. We have seen all this in the previous act, right? Now, there is one more important body that gets created here, and that is called as Board of Control. Now, what is this Board of Control? It is another body like how we have Court of Directors. Now, this Board of Control will take care of other matters. What are the other matters that we have here are? It could be administration, it could be political issues, all the military issues, etc. All the other matters except for commercial activities will be taken care by whom? Will be taken care by Board of Control. Another important thing, the Board of Control will be how many members? 6 members. Now, who are these 6 members? Very, very important. The first member is the Secretary of State of British, okay, who is basically a cabinet minister. Plus 1 member who is a chancellor. And there are 4 members who are coming from Privy Council. A very important 4 members are coming from what? Privy Council. What is this Privy Council? See, now you have a president, you have Prime Minister in our country, right? And this Prime Minister will take up all the laws. To give advice to Prime Minister, we have other ministers. Similarly, to give advice to the British government, we have a council. And what is that council called as? Privy Council. From that council, 4 members will be there in the Board of Control. So please try to understand what is the major important change that happens in the Pitt's India Act. The first important thing is that there is a formation of dual government. There are 2 separations. One is the Court of Directors, another is the Board of Control. The Court of Directors are 24 in number and they are going to take care of all the commercial activities of the company. Similarly, all the administrative, political, all the other military activities, all of that will be taken care by another body which is called as Board of Control. Board of Control will consist of 6 members. Out of that, one member is the Secretary of the State of British government, who is of a rank cabinet minister. Another person will be a chancellor, and there will be 4 members who are coming from the Privy Council. And this Privy Council is the same council which gives advice to the British government. I hope the first provision is very, very clear to everybody, right? Now the second provision, it says here is, now we had seen that in the previous, act, there were Governor General of Bengal, okay, and he had how many members? He had 4 executive members, right? 4 executive council. Pitt's India Act wanted to give more power to, the Governor of Bengal. He wanted to give more power to the Governor of Bengal. That is why what he does is, he reduces this number to 3 people. Okay, he reduces the number from 4, he reduces them to 3. Very, very important. Now look, automatically what happens? Out of these 3 people, even if one person is agreeing, says yes, then the law can be passed. Even if one person is saying yes, then the law can be easily passed. This is something that is very, very important. Now out of these 3 members who are there, 2 will be normal members, plus 1 will be Commander-in-Chief. That is somebody who is able to take all the military decisions. Because see, now you know that the Governor General of Bengal or this entire East India Company is now taking care of the country. They need some kind of military assistance. So for that, you have a Commander-in-Chief also being there. So right now, who is going to make all the laws, okay, is your Governor General of Bengal plus his 3 executive council. These 3 executive council, there is one person who is called Commander-in-Chief. Okay. So another important thing that happens over here is that all the company territories, okay, whatever territories that the company had, all these company territories will be called for the first time. Please understand, for the first time, they will be called as British possessions. Means what? See, so far in the Regulating Act, what we had seen is that, British government is not trying to control India. Please understand. British government is only trying to control what? It is only trying to control the British East India Company. Correct? That is what I told you. But for the first time, in Pitt's India Act, it says that all the territories that are there in the company, they all belong to whom now? British possessions, or they belong to British. Basically, you can see that British is now controlling what? The territories which are belonging to company, which are nothing but it is trying to control India here. Okay. So now let us see the important act here. So please understand Pitt's India Act, 3 important things that have happened over here. The first important thing is that there is one more body that has got created. Okay. Apart from Court of Directors, we have Board of Control. Board of Control will be looking after all the administrative, political and military matters. And here Board of Control will consist of 6 members. Out of that, 1 being the Secretary of the State, who is of the rank Cabinet Minister. 1 person is the Chancellor. Another 4 people are being a part of Privy Council. Privy Council is the same council who gives advice to British government or the Crown, you can say. Right? So there are many people. Out of that, 4 of them are coming from this particular Privy Council itself. Okay. Apart from this, what you need to understand, the second important thing that happens here is that the Governor General is given a little more power. How is he given a little more power? Instead of 4 members of Executive Council, now we have only 3-member Executive Council. Apart from this, all the territories that are coming under company are now called as British possessions. Means whatever territories company has, all of that is now a British possession. This is something another which is very, very important. And the last thing that we need to remember here is that there is one more Commander-in-Chief when it comes to Governor General of Bengal. Along with him, there is also a Commander-in-Chief. Now listen, most of the people or most of the times in textbook, this act is basically mixed with this act. Okay, or these are happening in together or they're like kind of combined. Because what happens here is, in this act itself, that is in 1784 itself, they also say that there was a veto power that was given to the Governor General of Bengal. Veto power means what? Okay, that they can overrule the powers of Executive Council. That means here you can see that the Governor General of Bengal is becoming more powerful. See, by now, what happens here is William Bentinck will have a case also. You all know that we can also remove the president, right? That if we feel that he is not, or the president is not doing the work properly, then what we can do is we can remove the president's office, right? We can impeach the president. We'll discuss about this when we're discussing impeachment process, right? But what you need to understand here is, similarly, what happens here is the Governor General of Bengal will also have to face a severe case, especially William Bentinck. People, Executive Council and the Supreme Court says that he is not doing his work properly. Compliance. Compliance means not doing the work properly, and there will be a case that runs on William Bentinck. Later comes a very important person, and that is your, Cornwallis, right? He says that he wants to become, okay? Here you can say a next important act that is there is your Act of 1786. Here you need to understand Lord Cornwallis, very, very important person. Now what basically he says is that Pitts come to Cornwallis and says that you become the Governor General of Bengal, please. He says that you become the Governor General of Bengal. Now what happens here is basically, he says, okay, I will become Governor General of Bengal only on 2 conditions. And the condition number 1 is that I have to be more powerful. Okay. And that is when basically what happens here is, when he says this, in this particular act of 1786, which is also another amending act, here you can see that the Governor General of Bengal basically gets the veto power. Veto power means he can override. Look at the word here. Override the Executive Council. He says that he wants to be the governor also, and he wants to be the commander-in-chief also. Means Lord Cornwallis says that I do not want another commander-in-chief. I will only become Governor General. I will only become Commander-in-Chief. In this case, you can also see that he can override the Executive Council. That means it is a veto power that is being given to whom? It is given to the Governor General of Bengal. The Governor General of Bengal can now take any decision because he has a veto power. I hope this is clear to everybody. So this is what is very, very important over here. The amending act was passed by the British government, and you can see more power to Governor General, as I already told, and to override the decision of council. Extraordinary condition, you can say. Now see, what happens here is Lord Cornwallis says that I want 2 conditions. You can see one of the conditions is that he wanted to have the powers of Governor General and the Commander-in-Chief. So in this act, you can see that your Cornwallis is he himself the Governor General of Bengal, and he himself is the Commander-in-Chief. Not just that, he said that he should be given overwritten the council decision. That is nothing but override the council's decision. That is nothing but here he is talking about the veto powers. I hope this act of 1786 is clear. Before we go to the next amending act, let us have a small quick revision. Long story short, let us see a summary here. And what is that summary? 1781, 1784, 1786. Please understand, these are not regulating acts, they are amending acts. Okay, they are not regulating acts because they are not regulating the company. Whatever flaws are there in the regulating acts, they have been now reduced. So here you need to understand that Governor General of Bengal plus his 4 Executive Council is more powerful than the Supreme Court because they can take all the decisions when it comes to revenue related matters. Then comes, this is the major thing that happens here, right? So that is what you need to remember. Then comes the major important amending act or a most important amending act, and that is your Pitt's India Act. In the Pitt's India Act, the first important provision that you need to remember here is the formation of dual government. You can see that there is dual government under Pitt's India Act. What is the dual government? Here you have court of directors who are 24 in number, and we have board of control who are 6 in number. Now please remember C for C. That is nothing but court of directors will take care of all commercial matters. Okay, all the revenue matters, that is trade, tax collection, everything. Similarly, board of control will take care of administration, political power and military power. Here, these 6 members are coming from 3 different points. One is the Secretary of the State, okay, who is of the rank Cabinet Minister, and then you have, one Chancellor, and then 4 members are coming from the Privy Council. Privy Council are those people who give advice to British government or Crown. Right? This is the first important provision over here. And we need to understand the other important provisions here. The other important provision here is the second provision that was there in the Pitt's India Act is about Governor General of Bengal being a little more powerful. Here you can see the council, which here was 4 members plus 4 members, but now you have 3 members. Out of this, one is the Commander-in-Chief. Along with this, the third provision that you need to remember here in this particular Pitt's India Act is, for the first time, all the company territories were called as British possessions. Right? All the company territories were called as British possessions. Here you can see this is how the act goes on, and the last important act of amending Act is 1786, wherein what happens here is that the Governor General of Bengal is now getting 3 members, of course, but along with that, Governor General of Bengal is getting a power to override the executive, which is also nothing but what? Veto powers. Now see, when it is Lord Cornwallis, he is the person who says he wants to become the Governor General of Bengal as well as the Commander-in-Chief. This is not in case for others. Okay. Apart from Cornwallis, if some other Governor General is coming, he is not the Commander-in-Chief. That time we will have a separate Commander-in-Chief. Please don't get confused here, because when I was studying, there was a lot of confusion that was there. Okay. So here in this act, you can see that he becomes Governor General on the condition that he wants to become the Governor General as well as the Commander-in-Chief. But when a new Governor General will come, that is when another Commander-in-Chief will be there. Okay, please don't get confused with this matter. I hope so far whatever we have discussed, that is from Amending Act of 1773, Regulating Act of 1773 to Amending Act of 1786. I hope everything is clear. Right? Now, next we are going to see the Charter Act or Regulating Act of 1793. Very, very important act apart from what we have studied. So after a lot of amendments, after 20 years, you can see that there is this Charter Act of 1793. Now, what are the important things that we have to understand? The first important thing here. See, in the previous Pitt's India Act, we had seen that the Board of Control, okay, had how many members? 6 members. Right? Out of these 6 members, okay, one was the Commander-in-Chief, one was the Secretary of the State, Board of Control had 6 members. Out of this, one was the Secretary of State, who was the Cabinet Minister. Correct? Similarly, there was one person who was Chancellor, and 4 people came from the Privy Council, right? But here, now we need to understand that there were 2 other members and only 2 came from the Privy Council. So this is something that we need to understand. Only 2 members come from the Privy Council. In the previous Pitt India Act, we had seen that there were 4 members who were coming from the Privy Council, but here you can see the board of directors a little bit of change. Okay, and not just that, the salary of this particular people will be given by British East India Company. Okay, the salary will be charged by whom? The British East India Company have to give the salary to this particular board of control. This is the first important provision. The second important provision here is that the Governor General was granted immense power. As I already told you in the previous act of 1786, we had seen that the Cornwallis had told that he himself wanted to become the Governor General and he himself wanted to become the Commander-in-Chief. So here you can see that there is no Commander-in-Chief. Okay, the Governor General himself was given more power. Apart from this, this is called supersede. I'll tell you what is the meaning of supersede. We had seen that in the Regulating Act, there are 3 provinces or presidencies, you can say, correct? And that was Bengal, Bombay and Madras. And we had seen that this, I'll just draw a crown here because this is Bengal here, right? And this was the Governor General of Bengal, right? Here you need to understand that this person was more powerful. And we had also seen that this person had got the veto power in the previous act. If by chance Governor General of Bengal is present in Bombay, then the power of this governor becomes completely 0. That is, similarly, if the Governor General is present in Madras, by chance, in that case, this person's power will become what? 0. That is nothing but what? Supersede. That is, if Governor General of Bengal by chance is present in any of the presidencies, he will be more powerful and that particular governor will have no power at all. Means that particular person will lose its power. Here you can see this is called as supersede, right? And the next important thing that we need to understand here is, all of you know about how does these KFC and Domino's work, right? The main company is somewhere else, but what happens is they are giving us franchisee. For example, if I want to open a Domino's, I can do it. Just go, sign a contract, give them some money. I can use their name and do trade. Can I do this? This is called as privilege or country trade, or it is also called as franchisee trade. That is nothing but British East India Company, okay, was giving individuals, means any other Britishers can come here, okay, they can get a privacy trade or privilege trade or a country trade. What does this mean? In the name of British East India Company, they can do trade. Similarly, how I can do trade using Domino's. I am not Domino's, right? I am not the company Domino's. I am just using the name Domino's and I am having my own company. Similarly, British East India Company's name will be used, okay, like a franchisee. This is called as privilege trade or a country trade. This thing started from this particular act of 1793. Here, many other individuals were able to do country trade, and what they did is they traded with India, China. They used to do trade of opium. Now please understand, China hate Indians because of the same reason. I'll tell you why. The trade was done by whom? British East India Company. The trade was done by, or the individuals who went to China taking opium was who? The British East India Company officials. But please understand, the China said, there is one statement what China said is that, Indians are British soldiers who came to China to loot and kill, right? So what you need to understand is, because of this privileged trade or country trade that was happening with China, that British East India Company was doing a lot of opium trade with China, and because of opium, there was a lot of issue that happened in China. Okay, I will not go there because it's not important for political point of view, but please understand, because of opium, China faced a lot of issues, a lot of wars that happened there in China. Because of this, China does not like India till now. Till now, India does not, India is not having that good relations with China because of the thing that has happened in 1793, right? So please understand that. So I already told you that Indians were British soldiers who came to China to loot and kill. I already told you this because of the country trade. Apart from this, here you can see the acquisition of sovereignty by crown subject on behalf of crown in their own rights. Here you can see that the crown is showing her power. That is nothing but the acquisition of sovereignty by crown subjects on the behalf of crown. That means here the crown means the British government, okay, on behalf of crown subject is East India Company. So whatever East India Company is going to acquire, all of that now belongs to the crown. This is what is being mentioned over here. Okay. Now, apart from this 5 lakh pounds, see how many lakh pounds? 5 lakh pounds of money supposed to be given by company to British government. The British government will take money from the East India Company because the company here or the British government is trying to do all these issues or all such kind of regulating act and everything is being done. So that is the reason now the East India Company have to give money to the British government. Let us have a small overview about this, okay, and then we'll go to the next one. Regulating Act of 1793. After the amending acts that we have seen in the previous topic, now we will have a small overview about Regulating Act of 1793. After discussing all the amending acts, now we are going to discuss in short about the Regulating Act of 1793, or also called the Charter Act of 1793. Here under this, the first important thing that was changed is about the Board of Control. In the previous Act of Pitt's India Act, we had seen that there will be 4 members who are coming from the Privy Council for Board of Control. Now we have only 2 members from Privy Council, and the salary of these will be given by British East India Company. This is the first important thing. And we had seen that there will be no commander-in-chief. Okay, the Governor General of Bengal was very powerful now. So powerful that he can also supersede the powers of Governor of Bombay plus Governor of Madras. That is, if the Governor General of Bengal was present in Bombay, he will act as a Governor General of Bombay itself. So his power will become 0. Similarly, his power will also become what? 0. The third important point that we need to understand here is about the privilege, or it's also called as country trade. This is like a franchisee trade. In the name of British East India Company, other individuals can trade. And the trade happened with China, and China did not like it. That is why China called India were British soldiers who came to China to loot and kill. These were the words that were used by China for Indians. Apart from this, we have also seen about the last but not the least that East India Company had to give 5 lakh pounds to British government, right? So that whatever profit that they have won, they have to give it to the British government. This is something that is very important. Apart from that, we have seen that the sovereignty of the British Crown. So whatever East India Company is going to capture, it is now the sovereignty is of the British Crown. This is something that we have to understand from the Charter Act of 1793 or the Regulating Act of 1793.